We have special responsibility against people of each area, perishing, suffering so long already. But there are other nations living there. And we should live up to our real values and understand that people are entitled to have their own sovereign states of their choice.
Thank you very much indeed. And now my question to Prime Minister. The Chechen Republic of Ichkeria is a hero country with brave people who never give up. What kind of role you see, role of Chechen people after defeat Russia, Mr. Prime Minister?
Thank you, Ina. Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, a very important event, and giving me the opportunity to speak. First of all, again, I would like to thank all of you for congratulating me with our independence. And before I start my main speech, I would like to say several words about Chechnya and what is going on now and what happened to us. 32 years ago, Chechen people proclaimed their own state, independence, sovereignty, and we started to re-established our state, and we started to build democratic country. And we think world changed, USSR transformed its other SNK, Russia changed, world changed, and we think we have a good opportunity to build our country. But Russia think other way. They didn't let us to do that. They terrorized us 3 years, and 1994 they started aggression war against Chechen, against our state. And during this war, we lost 300,000 civilians, more than 40 then children. And world community keep silence and let Russia to do this to us. If that time world community to stop Russia, I think we have a different situation now. We will not have war in Georgia, we will not have this brutal war which is going on in Ukraine this time. But it's happened. Anyway, Ina, thank you very much again for your presentation, and I will make my speech about Russia and about consequences of. I will do it my old way, as old man. I will do it in my papers, okay, not my phone. The main topic of our conference is the restructuring of Russia after its defeat in the war with Ukraine. In my speech, I want to focus on one of its regions, North Caucasus. The North Caucasus has always played a big role in the history of Russia. And this region is the geopolitical zone not only of Russia, which controls it, but also of several countries, including Georgia and Azerbaijan. And the Russian Empire, Tsars, general secretaries, and presidents changed, and the political structure changed. The monarchy was replaced by Bolshevism, and the Soviet Empire existed for more than 70 years, which was replaced by pseudo-democracy. However, Russia's main attitude towards Caucasians to subjugate or exterminate them has never changed. At the beginning of the 18th century, the active phase of the conquest of the Caucasus began through the settlement of its territory by Russian colonists. The process was accompanied by millions of victims. As a result of the colonization of the Caucasus, millions of people were killed and thousands of villages and were devastated, which led to the disappearance of entire several Caucasian peoples. The systematic murder of the peoples of the Caucasus has intensified since the end of the Russian-Turkish War, when Russian troops burned thousands of villages, exterminating all their inhabitants, including women and children. The onslaught of the Tsarist troops on the Caucasian people caused their unification. The first general movement of the North Caucasus, Highlanders against the expansion of the Russian Empire in the Caucasus at the end of the 18th century, was led by Sheikh Mansour. It was response directed against the cruel colonial policy of Russian Empire. The Caucasians had their own historical state, which was destroyed several times by the Russians. In the 19th century, Imam Shamil created the Caucasian Imamate, which for several decades waged an effective war against Russia. The significant numerical superiority of the Russian army made it possible in all cases to draw in blood all the attempts of the Highlanders to freedom. At the beginning of the 20th century, after the October Revolution in Russia, the Mountain Republic was proclaimed, which included the republics of North Caucasus. Officially, the independence of Mountain Republics was proclaimed on May 11, 1980, at a peace conference in Batumi. The territory of the partly recognized states covered 125 square kilometers with a population of about 2.9 million people. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Mountain Republics, limited by diplomatic non-recognition from the victors of the First World War, in particular France and Great Britain. Under these difficult conditions, the Mountain Republics signed recognition treaties with the Ottoman Empire, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria, since all these countries were defeated in the First World War and did not play a significant role in world politics at that time. The Republic experienced problems in the strengthening its statehood. Considering Russia's ongoing aggression in Ukraine today, the union of the Ukrainian People's Republic and the Mountain Republics is deeply symbolic. In 1919, an agreement was made between the Directory of the Ukrainian People's Republic and the Parliament of the Mountain Republic, which stated the following: additional agreement between the Directory of the Ukrainian People's Republic and the Parliament of the Mountain Peoples of the Caucasus. I will not read this whole content of this agreement, but you can read it in outline. You can find it and read it online. As we know from history, both the Ukrainian People's Republic and Mountain Republic were defeated by the Bolsheviks. The Russian Empire colonial policy gave way to the dictatorship of the proletariat and destroyed everything, even the smallest sprouts of freedom and democracy. Despite the active participation of the peoples of the Caucasus in the establishment of the Soviets, after its consolidation, Soviet power took over the peoples of the North Caucasus. And again, entire peoples become enemies. And a new wave of the genocide of the North Caucasus people began. Chechens, Karachay, Ingush, Balkars become victims of the murderous policy of the Soviet state. After 70 years, a new era began in the history of the Russian state. And it is accompanied by the practice of the intimidation, terror, murder, and violence, not only in the North Caucasus, Moldova, Transnistria, Georgia, Abkhazia, Ossetia, Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh, Ingushetia, and the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. But Caucasians never ceased to use the slighted opportunity to free themselves from the colonial yoke and revive the united statehood. After the collapse of the USSR, the Chechen people used their right to independence and declared on September 6, 1991, the day of the restoration and the state independence of the Chechen Republic. In October 1991, Georgia President Zviad Gamsahurdia and President of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria Jafar Dudayev began to discuss the project of the Caucasian Confederation. In December 1991, January to 1992, a COP took place in Georgia, as a result of which President Zviad Gamsahurdia was removed and Eduard Shevardnadze, who was supported by Russia, came to power. And in the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, the Kremlin began to form an armed opposition which was supposed to overthrow the popularity elected general government and establish a pro-Russian occupation regime. These attempts were unsuccessful until the end of 1994. In December 1994, Russia launched a large-scale war. Russia Defense Minister Paul Grachov promised President Boris Yeltsin to restore order in Chechnya in 2 hours with one airborne regiment. In the 80 years since the start of the Russian-Chechen War, Russia was able to colonize the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, plans its own collaborationist government, but failed to break the struggle of the Chechen people for their independence. The government of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria is working successfully in exile as a result of the signing of agreement between the military departments of the two countries and the armed forces of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria fighting today as part of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Chechens were very enthusiastic about the recognition by the Ukraine rather of the fact that Russia occupied the territory of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, which was the reason for the entry into the armed forces of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria to many volunteers fighting against the Russian aggression. I thank you, Oleg, your parliament and all Ukrainian people for that what you have done for us. The Chechens are confident that Ukraine's victory in the war against Russia will allow them to occupy the territory of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and restore their state. At the present, the best representatives of the enslaved and occupied peoples of the Caucasus are fighting on the Ukraine front, repelling enemy attacks and liberating of the occupied lands of Ukraine. There is confidence that the brave and heroic resistance of the Ukrainian army to the Russian invaders and the world support of the struggling people of Ukraine will break the back of the Russian aggressors. In connection with the foreign, I would like to urge the participants of this forum to appeal to the international community, guided by the general accepted principles and norms of international law. Appeal to the parliaments and leaders of the United Nations member states to recognize the right to self-determination of peoples forcibly held by Russia, expressed in the right of the oppressed people to freely decide the issue of the state status and independently carry out their cultural and economic development. All these years, the peoples of the North Caucasus have been closely watching the struggle of the Chechens for freedom and are waiting for international recognition of the rights of the Chechen people to their statehood, to start their own struggle for independence and in the future to recreate considering modern realities. The Caucasian Confederation following the example of the Confederation of Balkan Peoples 1998. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you very much also for mentioning my president, Zviad Gamsahurdia. I would like to remind you that in 1992, in February, in Grozny, was a press conference where both great presidents of Georgia and Ichkeria warned people that Russia is not a democratic country, it's an illusion, that Russia is started to be aggressor. And also the quote from one of the Tsar that Poland and Caucasus, it's two main headaches of Russian Empire. Now I would like to ask Oleg Dunda, Deputy of Rada of Ukraine. We know that Rada of Ukraine, as mentioned, Prime Minister of Ichkeria, last year recognized Chechen Republic of Ichkeria as occupied territory. In this August, it was found a temporary special commission regarding decolonization of colonized people of Russian Federation. Could you tell us more in detail about this initiative?
Дуже дякую, пані Інно. У мене перше питання, як краще, російською чи українською? Українською. Ну, щоб всі розуміли. Ще раз подякую велике пані за питання. І взагалі те, що ви зараз сказали, про те, що була створена так звана тимчасова спеціальна комісія, є відповіддю на питання, теми питання цього заходу, що розпадеться Росія, чи вона розвалиться. І створення тимчасової спеціальної комісії відповідає так. І це відповідь Верховної Ради. Офіційна. Бо інакше сенсу її створювати не було потрібно. І додам ще трошки про цю спеціальну комісію. З моєї точки зору, найближчим часом ця спеціальна комісія повинна бути найважливішим органом, що діє в Верховній Раді. Чому? Нещодавно ми проводили десь тиждень тому, проводили в Києві великий захід конференцію наукову, міжнародну, де були присутні академіки, академії наук, присутні були експерти з України, а також експерти взагалі з Європи і з Сполучених Штатів. І там було основне питання, те, що ви почали з самого початку, чи нас чекає розпад Російської Федерації, Російської імперії, чи чекає федералізація. Ми не говоримо зараз. Демократизація, федералізація, тут є я Пономарьов, який постійно говорить, що давайте федералізувати, для мене це одне і те саме. Можемо і інше. І практично всі експерти, там були колишні прем'єр-міністри, були колишні міністри оборони, були міністри зовнішніх справ та інші. І всі, навіть ті люди, від яких я не очікував, вони дипломатичні, всі як один, після 1,5 року вони сказали, а у нас немає іншого вибору. Або існує українська держава, або не існує Російська імперія. І не існує Російська імперія, або навпаки. Не існує українська держава, а існує Російська імперія. Тобто інших варіантів завершення цієї війни за незалежність не існує. Тому, з моєї точки зору, ця тимчасова комісія повинна бути найважливішою, бо вона повинна взагалі вирішувати питання виживання української держави, як і виживання великого європейського проєкту. Всіх інших країн, які присутні в цьому проєкті взагалі. А як ми знаємо, питання виживання найважливіше. Важливіше, ніж бюджет, важливіше, ніж культура, освіта і так далі. Тому вона повинна бути найважливішою. Ця комісія повинна розглядати такі питання, як проголосували Ахмед згадав тогорічне голосування, визнання окупованої незалежної Ічкерії. Там є питання визнання Татарстану незалежності, є питання і геноциду черкесів. Багато. Ця комісія повинна ці питання всі вирішити по всім територіям і зв'язків з корінними народами, малими народами, національними народами на теренах Російської імперії. Відносно, ще повертаючись до питання розпаду федералізації, хотів би зазначити, є таке відоме висловлювання Ейнштейна, якщо ви 4 рази робили одну ту саму річ і отримали одну ту самий результат, то чому ви вирішили, що на 5-й раз результат буде більше? Ну це ж дурно. І тому, коли ми говоримо, що 200-300 років ми мали Російську імперію, а давайте зараз її федералізуємо і зробимо якоюсь доброю, демократичною, то ви ж робили 4 рази. Чому вирішили, що 5-й раз буде інакше? Ну, взагалі його не може бути інакшим, тому що потрібно розуміти одну просту річ. Вся історія людства доводить, що ніколи за всю історію жодна імперія не ставала демократичною і федеральною. Вони завжди розсипалися. Бо чому? Тут дуже проста причина. Бо це імперські відносини. Є метрополія, центр, який і є колонія, регіони, з яких ця метрополія витягує всі гроші і ресурси для виконання своєї імперської мети. І взагалі будь-яка імперія не може жити демократично. У неї є одна мета – це розширення. Будь-який спосіб на будь-які прилеглі території. От пані Анна, напевно, цю історію. Польща так само проходила цю історію. Як тільки вона стає неспроможною це робити, або доводить, що в неї сил немає, відповідно, сама мета існування зникає. Вона починає розсипатися. І Російська імперія, до речі, проходила це багато разів. Згадаємо Російську імперію 17-й, як вона посипалася. Згадаємо 91-й рік, як посипалася тоді Радянська імперія. Так само програна афганська війна, в тому числі, яка довела, що сил на утримання цих територій, сил для подальшої експансії, воно вже не існує. Те, що ми бачимо сьогодні на теренах України, те, що відбувається, доводить, що сил так само немає. Взагалі. І це доводить українська армія, українська влада, українське суспільство кожного дня. Тому, безумовно, жодної модернізації, демократизації і взагалі будь-чого там не відбудеться, буде повага. І, до речі, тут хотів би згадати один великий міф. Багато хто з прихильників демократизації або федералізації говорять про те, що західний світ цього не хоче поваги. Це міф. Навколо Російської імперії взагалі багато міфів. Це один із них. Міф, що Захід боїться. Та не боїться. Західний світ, він дуже такий сталий, конформістський. Взагалі, от якщо б можна було так зробити, щоб нічого не змінилося, західні політики на це погодилися разом. Нам добре. Але це не про страхи. Я пам'ятаю, і тут, до речі, я пам'ятаю, там місяць тому, коли Пригожин йшов до Москви, це було важливо. На другий день мені почали дзвонити ті люди, депутати з Вашингтону, конгресмени з Вашингтону, лорди з Лондону, сенатори з Франції. Казали, слухай, ти був правий. А дійсно вона може залити. Ми тобі, коли розмовляли з тобою 2 місяці тому, ми тобі не вірили. Не тому, що ми боялися. Ми просто звикли, от є ця Росія, вона була, є, напевно буде, вона не зміниться. Тут експерти навколо нас говорять, там різні фінтенки, які фінансуються за рахунок Росії вже багато десятиріч, які говорять, потрібно знаходити якісь там компроміси. Ми просто в це не віримо. А зараз ми побачимо, це відбудеться. А виявляється, в Москві немає засобів, як розгромити, придавити пункт 5 тисяч бійців. Що це? 500 кілометрів, 5 тисяч бійців, там ніхто нічого не може зробити. Виявляється, як один з академіків на тиждень тому на цьому конференції сказав, Російська імперія, вона зовні така потужна і монолітна, а зсередини вона крихка. І готова розломитися в будь-яку мить. І цей марш Пригожина – це довів. Що, виявляється, вона не спроможна вирішити всередині себе завдання, більше того, вона не спроможна всередині себе захищати. І про це сказав там лорд Васман, про це сказали сенатори з Франції, про це сказали конгресмени, до речі, республіканці. Це важливо. Республіканці з Вашингтону. Вона крихка, і нам потрібно до цього готуватися. На що я зазначив? І від нас з вами залежить, не розпадеться вона, тут питань немає. А що буде після? Які це буде території? Що буде на Кавказі? Це велике питання. Що буде з керівництвом? А які умови будуть виставлені, я вибачаюся, всім майбутнім національним незалежним республікам для їх визнання їх суверенітету? В тому числі і репарації. Ну, це справедливо. Якщо вони заплатять своїх статків, своїй землі, своїх сировини 10% і за це їх визнають суверенним, я думаю, практично всі з них погодяться. Ми цю історію вже проходили, до речі, на початку 90-х з Казахстаном, Білорусі, України. Нічого немає. І все віддали ядерну зброю. Ніхто нікому не погрожував. Це відбудеться. І тому ми з вами повинні не тільки говорити, скільки жертв, а їх було багато, безумовно. Скільки жертв було в 90-х роках, в 2000-х роках. Ми повинні в першу чергу говорити про майбутнє. Що ми будемо там будувати? Як ми це будемо будувати? З ким ми це будемо будувати? Які відносини тут? І це найбільш головне. І казати, Ічкерія, ви перемогли. Ви не жертва. І Анові. Так само і Грузії, ви так само не жертва, ви герої. Ви перемогли. Які ви маленькі. Яка була ви імперія. І ви перемогли. І Україна так само в цьому переможе. І іншого шляху у нас з вами немає. І ми разом з державою будемо це. Так, пані Анна? Дякую.
Дякую, пане Олеже, за вашу позицію, за вашу боротьбу і за вашу підтримку Ічкерії. And now I would like to transfer the microphone to Pan Yurai Mesik, author of excellent book, 2023, the year the Russian Empire died. I have a very simple question. Why did you write this book now?
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to be here. I enjoy your company. But why I wrote the book? Well, first because it's important. And it's important to educate elites in the West about what is actually going on in Russia. I will start with some of what you may consider a bold statement, but the Russian Empire, there is nothing like Russian Federation. That's Orwellian usage. It's a centralistic imperial country. Russian Empire is clinically dead. It is already clinically dead. It is still breathing, which in Russian imperial tradition is still killing people.
The best failed state.
I'm a medical doctor by background, so clinically dead makes sense to me. It is still breathing, which means it's killing people, but it is on its deathbed. It will not recover from what is happening. The collapse and disintegration of Russia is an inevitable process. It will happen whether we want it or whether we do not want it. It is physically and mathematically given. It is given by erosion of the fundaments on which the Russian Empire stands. Mythological fundaments or ideological fundaments, military fundaments, economic fundaments, they all are breaking down. The question is only how quickly it will happen, what will be the process of Russia's disintegration, and into how many pieces it will break down. Now, the Western elites in Washington, in Brussels, London, Paris, Berlin, did not wake up to this reality yet. And this is not the first time in the history. The Western elites failed to envision the collapse of the communism in Europe. In the spring of 1989, they did not have a clue what's going on, and that the communistic empire will collapse, communist ideology, in Central Europe. In 1991, they had no idea about the upcoming collapse of Soviet Union. They were completely cognitively unprepared, despite tons of Kremlinologists and Sovietologists with the best titles from the best Western universities. They failed. They have a tradition of failing. They are failing now in not seeing what is coming in case of Russian Empire. It is, however, very serious because if the Western policy will remain, we want Russia to weaken, but not to disintegrate. It means presenting Russia as a colony to China. And it also means that the disintegration, when it happens, will be bloody and violent. The proper Western policy should be recognizing that the disintegration, the collapse and disintegration of Russia will happen, that there will be no democratic Russia. It's utter nonsense. It is impossible, absolutely impossible to build a democracy in a country of more than 100 million people, a large country, without any historical experience of democracy. I often read Russian liberals, intellectuals living in London, Paris, America, and dreaming about a great, good Russia, democratic Russia future. It's just a dream. There is no fundament for building a democratic Russia. There is a chance to build democratic states on the wings of the Russian Empire. Now, the task, the goal of the Western countries, of the collective West, should be managed disintegration of Russia. And as part of the managed now, there is plenty of historical experiences with managed disintegration of empires. I was born in Czechoslovakia, a country born on the managed disintegration of Austro-Hungarian Empire. After the First World War, there was an effort to manage disintegration of the German Empire, and the colonies were taken from Germany, but then there were following failures in demilitarization of Germany. The Ottoman Empire disintegration happened, and on the territory of former Ottoman Empire, Turkey, Republic emerged, and many Arab states emerged on that territory. And after the Second World War, there was a Potsdam Agreement, which managed the process of demilitarization, denazification, decentralization of Germany. And today, Germany is a peaceful and great, economically prosperous country. And the same happened in case of Japan, and managed demilitarization and the cultural change in Japan. The same should be the goal in case of disintegrating, collapsing Russia. Demilitarization. It is actually happening on a very large speed. Russia is being demilitarized on the fields and in the forests of Ukraine. They are losing the amounts of weapons which were concentrated over 70 years, weapons and ammunition, which was accumulated over 70 years, is being lost in an unprecedented speed. Russia is being demilitarized by this war. Their army is living on the borrowed time. The supplies are running out, and they are not able to produce sufficient amount to compete with the economic performance of the Western countries. Total nonsense. Russia is a country which is not able to produce a good quality car. Are we serious that they can produce a significant amount of good quality weapons or airplanes? No, that's illusion. But we somehow learn to live with that. Denuclearization is a necessity. It is a must for security of Europe. And it means physical destructions of rockets and nuclear weapons on the territory of Russian Empire. It is needed. We cannot afford, the world cannot afford in the 21st century to leave a rogue state run by mafia to control nuclear weapons. We need denazification of Russia. Now, I would say the treatment of the delusion delusions in which the Russian population is living. Many Western analysts believe that the problem of civilized world is certain colonel, or what was his KGB guy called Vladimir Putin. No, Putin is not an embodiment of what is the real problem is much deeper. It is the population of Russia. Their beliefs, the mythologies, the delusions in which they live, and they are incredible. And then the next is decolonization of Russia. Russia is colonial empire. Around 70%, probably less than 70%, but officially 71% of the Russian population are ethnic Russians. That means that around 30% of the population are not Russian. These are enslaved nations, members of enslaved nations, starting with Chechens and other nations of Northern Caucasus, through the nations of Volga region, Tatars, Bashkirs, to the nations of Siberia and Far East, Buryats, Yakuts, and dozens of other nations. So the world, civilized world, accepted the colonization of empires as a natural development, and colonization of Africa, let's say, and the colonization of Russia must be part of the political goals of the West. Now, close my talk. There are three major tasks, practical tasks, which we face right now. One is we need to trigger debate about disintegration of Russian empire among the elites in the EU, United States, Germany. We must not allow that our political elites are unprepared, cognitively unprepared for this future. Like as there were in 1989, in 1990. We must work on making our elites to understand what is ahead. We need to design the process manage the process of disintegration of Russia, parameters for recognition of new states on the ruins of the Russian Empire. And I think that this should be done on the Kyiv Peace Conference next year. Now, there is no announced Kyiv Peace Conference, but the disintegration of Austro-Hungarian monarchy was managed by the Paris Peace Conference. So I think that Kyiv Peace Conference should be. After all, the whole history of Russia is built on the history of Kiev and Rus. The history of what we know as Russia today started 500 years before the Muscovite state became dominant in the region in Kiev and Rus. And the third practical task is we need to build capacities for independence of the enslaved nations and also of the individual regions with majority Russian population. Capacities for these new states, which means, for instance, to support elites living in exile and working on achieving independence of their nations. Buryats, Tugans, Bashkirs, nations of North Caucasus. Well, that's what I wanted to say. Slava Ukraine and the freedom to enslaved nations of Russia.
Thank you very much indeed. And we have 12 minutes more.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are a few more copies of my book available. I will put them on the table. So you are invited to take and I can sign it for you.
Thank you very much. And I have a very important question to each speaker, please, very briefly. Imagine the situation. You mentioned the dreamers of good Russian of the future is just a dream. But I can tell you this is a very expensive dream because can you imagine there is Russia, or dreamers of Russia of future. We have colonized peoples and countries, and we have no information about them. We cannot spread this information. For example, information about Chechen wars is just forbidden information. And we have some forces in the West who support builders of Russia, good Russia of the future. So what we could do to shift focus of these supporters who invest millions and billions to these dreamers of the future, and focus to colonize peoples and countries who wants to be free and who has right to be free. Please, Anna.
Paradoxically, there is nothing new in this vision. We already witnessed this, and we managed to come up to proper conclusions with this. First and foremost, we have to consolidate within the region among freedom-loving nations, whether within current Russian Federation, yes, this mafia state, I agree, or outside already fighting for retaining independence and territorial integrity like Ukraine, like Georgia. We have to strongly support their cause and their aims. Therefore, we are here in this company because it is nothing new. We do this, we try to ensure changing this cognition gap between the Central and Eastern Europe and the Western world. And we try to resist whatever comes from the Russian Federation. And after a rupture, probably some kind of Muscovite state is there. And probably it will be problematic for us. Therefore, there are still some people in the West thinking that maintaining status quo even with so awful, appalling regime means security for the whole world. Do not believe it. Do not believe it. Because empires have no borders and they never stop. So de-imperialization, and I agree, controlled, managed disruption of Russian Federation is the prerequisite for secure order of the world after war waged by Russian Federation in Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, please. Very briefly. Oh, okay. Oleg, пане Олеже.
Дуже дякую, пан прем'єр-міністр. Я тоді за обох відповім. Дивіться, дуже правильне запитання, і на нього є відповідь. Одна проста відповідь, трошки складніше з того. Проста відповідь, самі побачите. Ну, от як з Пригожин. Я ж навів приклад. До Пригожина ніхто не вірив, Пригожин пішов і одразу такий, а вона дійсно може розпастися, вона змінюємо свою думку. Тобто те, що буде відбуватися на теренах цієї території, імперії, сама доведе коректність сценарію того процесу. Тобто, проста відповідь. Само відбудеться, ви самі все побачите, бо історичний процес є невпливний. Він сам відбудеться. Хочете ви це, чи не хочете. Є складніша відповідь, як підняти сонце. Ми постійно дивимося багато експертів, і це зараз видно після пункту Пригожина, говорять про те, що перемога в Україні у війні, ці вихід на кордон 91 року, стали існування імперії під загрозою. Це моя думка, це думка багатьох експертів, які там публікуються Вашингтон Пост, Нью-Йорк Таймс, Великобританія і так інше. Це розуміння існує. Але візьмемо, наприклад, Сполучені Штати, там за останніми соціологічними опитуваннями не так багато, як мені хотілося, людей вірять в перемогу України. Вони кажуть, що Росія багато ресурсів, Україна трошки менше. А в середньому зараз місяць тому вірила в перемогу, бажають понад 50%. Безумовно. Україна є френдлі, ми хочемо, щоб Україна перемогла, але віра трошки інше, там десь 25-30%. Консерватори ще менше. Тобто, якщо ми використовуємо інструмент і доводимо про те, що Україна переможе і вийде на кордону 91-го і піднімемо цей відсоток, це автоматично, просто автоматично змінює думку експертів і політичних оглядачів на те, що Росія розпадеться. Тобто, ще раз, потрібно бити і не пояснити не те, що вона розпадеться, а те, що Україна переможе. А в них містах це практично пов'язані історії, пов'язані сценарії. І використовувати саме це. Тому і в даному випадку ми пов'язуємо це. Допомагайте Україні, перша частина. Ця зброя, якою ви допомагаєте, Україна стає переможцем в цій війні і стане переможцем. І відповідно далі Росія програє і розпадається. І відповідно дивимося вже далі сценарій, як це буде відбуватися. Дякую.
Дякую дуже. Прем'єр-міністр.
Бачите одразу.
If we talk about Russia, Russia is since 2002 it's not a legitimate state. This is unlegitimate state. I would like to explain. During the Gorbachev's time, when some called reforms or perestroika, the Supreme Soviet of USSR adopted two laws which equalized Union republics, autonomous republics, and they had the same status. After the collapse of USSR, these republics, autonomic republics, which become Union republics, they signed a federal treaty in 1992. It was for 10 years. Its treaty should be prolonged in 2002, which Russia did not. Putin denies this treaty, and since that time, it's not legitimate country. And therefore, all this international, all the subjects, they have right to self-determination and become subjects and build their own country, own states. What we should do, and after we win war in Ukraine, I think it will happen, and therefore, Caucasian Confederation is a reality, and we should take it back this time and establish this country. It will be price what Russia paid for, has done in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Chechnya, and maybe after that it could be Russia become a democracy country. We'll see, but until that, we have a Russian empire, and we should fight them. Whatever we have to do, we fight them. We should fight them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very important point because, as we see, Russia is not Russian Federation. It's not only aggressor or criminal state or terrorist state. It has problems with legal statements, questions. Yes. So it's very important. Thank you very much. Yuray, please, we have 4 minutes. Yeah.
I just want to answer your question, which is what we can do to support nation building or state building efforts on the territory of Russian Empire. Well, I think that we should think, and by we I mean all Poles, Czechs, Slovaks, members or elites of Baltic states and other people who have experience of being occupied by Russia, understand what's going on. We should create something like Rammstein for democracy in Russia. Simply informal coalition of elites that would create a mechanism to support these state building efforts, building capacities, supporting this project. It can be institutionalized, for instance, as a foundation, so we have the Visegrad Foundation. I don't have a ready recipe, but the idea of working together on that in a kind of Rammstein format for independence, and I think that that would be a reasonable answer and a reasonable first step, let's say.
Thank you very much indeed. We had today a great team, I think. We worked on such a question, very important question. And so we finished, we were done. And I would like one more time to spread gratitude to organizers and to, I see here, Petr Szyniawski, thank you very much, and to Chairman Dr. Thank you so much.